Hello, my name's Richard Collins. I'm a member of Above Bar Church. Thanks for joining me for Stories in Lockdown. Today I'm joined by Sophie Hills and Emily Aston. Sophie is the head of geography at Oasis Academy Mayfield in Sholing. She's been teaching for 8 years, and her hobbies include cooking, exercising, and I'm told, Sophie, you enjoy camping in your 1950s German fire engine. What's that all about?
So we were watching a program and saw somebody convert a fire engine, wondered if it was a thing, found one on eBay and bought it. So we have been converting it into a camper van, which gets a lot of attraction. And yeah, we go around to campsites and we camp, which is our way of holidaying in the UK, which is great.
I bet it's drawn a lot of attention.
Yeah, it gets a lot of attention. One person even asked if we could not have a water fight using the hose, which we thought was very funny because the hose definitely doesn't work, but also why would we do that? So yeah, it gets a lot of attention, but it's a really nice way actually of starting conversations when you arrive on a campsite, because people come up and chat to you, and it's really sociable. It's good.
Thank you. So Emily works at a school in Liss near Petersfield, been teaching for about 12 years, and is currently a special needs coordinator and an assistant head teacher in her school. She likes running, and I think I saw you, Emily, raising money recently on Facebook doing some running. Was that a sponsored run?
Yeah, so I signed up for my first marathon last year to do the Southampton Marathon to raise money for Above Bar Church CAP Debt Centre. Like most things, that got postponed and then cancelled. So I decided to do it anyway. So I ran the distance. They sent me a medal and a t-shirt, and yes, I've been able to raise some money for CAP, which is great.
It hurt?
Not as much as I thought it would, but I was very, very slow, so that might have helped.
So both of you, where do you live and how long have you been at Above Bar Church, Sophie?
So I live in Bitton. I live on quite a busy road, but actually I only live 3.5 miles from my work. And I've been attending Above Bar probably for about 8 years, but I've been officially a member, I think, for 4 or 5 years. I actually became a member before my husband, even though he's been going to Above Bar for about 15 years.
Okay. What about you, Emily?
So I live in Basildon. I've been going to Above Bar Church for about 3 years. So my husband, I wouldn't say was born and raised in Above Bar Church, and so as we were sort of moving towards marriage, that's the church I started coming to as well.
So you're both teachers. Sophie, what's the life of a teacher like? Give us an idea of the difference between your life before lockdown and the effect of the changes that have happened recently.
So life before lockdown was, as a teacher, was pretty exhausting. It's the best job in the world. I absolutely adore my job. I wouldn't swap it for the world. It's exhausting because you're constantly on the go and you very rarely get any time. And the days, I guess, are pretty long, but that's just standard teaching. That's not particular to my academy. And I guess it's really rewarding. You see kind of the progress when you're teaching students, you see changes in them day to day, you hear stories, you get to celebrate with them. So I guess that's what it was like before lockdown. After lockdown, or during lockdown, sorry, it's very, very different. It's a completely different job. I guess at times it can feel quite isolating because you're not talking to the students, you're just emailing, sending work. You don't necessarily always get replies because I teach in a slightly underprivileged area, so not all students have got laptops, so they can't always complete the work or email me. And it's even harder to get them to understand technology, to be able to do video calls and things with them. And I guess it's a lot harder then to kind of see the success and see the progress. But I guess the advantages are that I have so much more time. It's a lot less stressful, just because you're not dealing with behavioural issues and you're not dealing with kind of just complications that come up on a day-to-day basis. So I guess actually I have a lot more time and a lot more energy because I'm not kind of run around. So yeah, there's pros and cons. I really miss being in a work environment. I miss being with my friends in the office, and we have such a laugh, and it's so communal. You're all in it together, which is just so lovely, and you don't necessarily get that sense when you're at home. But equally, I'm enjoying the fact that I have a lot more time. I can do things that I've really missed doing, like exercising, and I've been able, just to pick up new hobbies, which is great.
I wanted to ask you about the amount of marking that you have. I have a friend who's a teacher, and she's an English teacher, and she says that she has more work now grading all of the essays and work that she set than she had when she was a regular teacher. Have you found the marking to be a lot in your job?
Definitely before, so English always have it a bit tough. I would say geography, most people say it's just colouring in, which is definitely not. But I would say that actually, no, my school has been incredible. They've totally recognised that life in lockdown is very difficult and it's very different, and therefore there's no expectation at all on quantity or quality of marking. They're really happy just us looking over the students' work if they email it to us, and emailing the students back with comments. Obviously, it's up to some teachers. Some teachers have been working way more than what they would choose to do. I think it really depends on your school. Like I say, I've been so lucky that my academy has not put any pressure on us to do that. They've just asked us to do what is feasible and possible at this time, which has meant that it's not been anywhere near as stressful as I know some people's experiences have been. Before lockdown, I've got a really good marking policy. The school has really supported that marking policy, and it means that I've got a really good balance of the amount of time that I spend on marking and then what the students get from my marking. So I guess really it's not changed, but that's a good thing.
Thank you. Now, Emily, you do coordination, but do you also teach as well? What's changed with your job?
Yeah, so my role is a bit different to Sophie's, and also I'm in primary rather than secondary. So I would say my experience has almost been the polar opposite to Sophie's. So I had a brief period where we were only open obviously for key workers and vulnerable children, where I was maybe in 2 or 3 days a week and then 2 or 3 days at home. That was great. I was making sourdough and learning to play the ukulele and running, and also doing all my work, but being able to be more flexible about what my working hours look like and how I organise my day, but also getting to go in and see staff and spend time with children. But then since May, I've been in full time every day. So I have a slightly unusual role. I manage a class of children who all have significant special needs and education health care plans. So I have 12 children, so they all count as vulnerable. They're all allowed to be in school every day. We've done a bit of a rota, so I've been teaching them and doing my management things as well. My stress levels have probably gone up. They're reasonably high normally anyway, but partly because there's been a lot to juggle. So who are still at home. We've got a lot of children who are now back in school full time. We've got staff who are off, and part of my role is lining. We've also got a lot of staff who are in, and it's just a lot of, we've got parents who have children in every day, and we have parents whose children are never in. So it's quite a split environment, and we're obviously also having to make lots of plans as things change. So yeah, so it has felt challenging,
we see on the news, we read the news, we see the TV news about the future for our schools and children going back, full time. As we're coming to the end of the summer, how do you see the future looking from the summer and then into the autumn when all the children will be needing to go back to school? How do you see the future in your school, Sophie? What decisions are going to be made about how many children can come back, social distancing, all of that kind of thing?
Well, I definitely don't envy senior leadership team. They're the ones ultimately that have to kind of make those decisions. And it's all based on government guidelines, which have been very wishy-washy, to say the least. They change all the time. So, for example, there's a current set of guidelines that have come out, which are almost impossible for most schools to even complete. I'm really fortunate that my school is a new build, so there is a bit more space, and the design of the building allows for us to segregate the year groups quite nicely. So senior leadership team have come up with a plan, which they've then pitched to middle leaders like myself, and we were able to give feedback, say how comfortable we felt with that plan, suggest any improvements. But the issue that we have is that on the 16th of August, the government could cancel those plans completely and say that actually they've realised schools can't do that and they're not going to go back, or they could scrap the plan completely and tell us to all go back. They could change it and we've only got 2 weeks to sort it out before the kids are due back. So I just really feel for leadership. I think it's really tough.
You need to be flexible and able to adjust to what's being required. Yeah. What about you, Emily? Are you making decisions as part of the leadership?
Yeah. So I would say I'm influencing decisions more than making them. I don't envy head teachers at all. So I think we are probably, I don't know if this is fair to say, but in a slightly different position from secondary schools, because so infant schools have had 2/3 of their pupils in full time. Well, that's what they've been asked to do for a whole half term. Junior schools have had at least a quarter of their school in full time every day, and we teach everything in classes anyway. So actually, while there was probably a period in which primary schools were maybe in a more challenging position than secondary schools because of having to have lots of children suddenly were having to come back, now we're probably a little bit more used to what that looks like, and the primary setup works a bit better for that anyway. There's lots of complicated decisions. I was in a meeting tonight, didn't finish till gone 7 o'clock tonight, around exactly that, planning for what it looks like in September and what we're communicating to parents, when we're communicating that, clearing things with governors and the county, and exactly as Sophie said, that may all change. And there's lots of complications. So the expectation is that all children are back full time. That will be compulsory. But how we do school is looking very, very different. All children have to face the front at the moment. You kind of have to teach from the front. Certainly in my role, working with children with significant needs, that you can't teach like that. And so there's a lot of trying to work out, I guess, the nitty-gritty of how it looks. And there's a lot of parent and child and staff anxiety around that, which we have to manage as well.
So what are the main challenges that you have being a Christian in the workplace? How do you express your beliefs and who you are in the workplace? Sophie, what's it like for you?
I guess I would say it's fairly easy. So Oasis is a Christian academy, so I can very much be open about my faith. I have asked to set up a prayer group, and that was very much supported. So I'm fortunate in that position, and that's really nice because I've worked at other schools before where I definitely didn't feel comfortable and there were challenges around that, whereas actually I can talk about my faith really openly and nobody kind of looks at you a bit strangely because it's a Christian academy, there's Christian values and ethoses. So yeah, it's really supportive and it's really encouraging. I would say the only difficulty that I have is that there aren't many Christians in the school. So one of my best friends at work who's a Christian, she won't be coming back in September. And that's a real challenge, just knowing that I don't necessarily have kind of a close-knit Christian friend that I can go to. We often take time out to pray over difficult situations. And one of the suggestions moving forward is that we'll be in much smaller teams, which means that we won't be able to socialise as a whole school as easily, which means that, again, you're kind of limited with your group. But given that the school has been so supportive so far, and they've been so aware of people's mental health in this sort of situation, I have no doubt they'll come up with a really great plan as to how we can socialise it. Again, it's just waiting for government guidelines and seeing where we can go.
What about you, Emily, in particular the last few months? What have you learned about yourself and about God in the challenges that you've faced the last few months?
Yeah, I think it's been a great chance to reflect on what teaching is and what that means. We all, I think, know what teaching is, but there's a lot of other roles, and actually it was quite interesting when schools were closed to a lot of children, because all of a sudden a lot of the society systems didn't work, and I hope that makes people reflect on, you know, at times you feel like you're a social worker, a therapist, a family support worker. There's so much that's part of that role, and without schools, so many things kind of quickly, you know, there were a lot of concerns around safeguarding children and mental health particularly, because that's a lot of what we do, and I really care about that. And so I think it was interesting to hear and see some of those discussions. Challenges are really, or have been, around balancing so many different things, and everyone's lived experience is so different. So initially I was really conscious that when we first went into lockdown, my well-being probably improved. It was nice to spend more time with my husband, who was working from home, and there were a lot of things that for us were really positive, but a lot of people's well-being really got worse. So really trying to balance and put yourself in other people's shoes. So for some people this has been absolutely horrendous, and there'll be children coming back to school who have had an absolutely appalling time, and there will be other people who really don't want to come out of that because they've had great family time, really enjoyed it. So that's been a challenge. In terms of what I've learned about God, I think it's really made me reflect on how much I do things in my own strength, particularly recently, where it's been even more hectic than normal. It's so easy for me to forget to pray and forget to hand things over to God. And then if I do, forget to give him back the praise and glory for supporting me. It's very easy to think, oh, I managed that situation really well, and forget, no, hang on, that was God working through me. So it's, yeah, trying to have more conscious awareness of that, I think, is a challenge.
Sophie, has your faith grown the past few months, the challenges you faced?
Yeah, definitely. I think part of the benefit of having a bit more space and a bit more time and flexibility, as Emily was saying, is that I've been able to do so much more Christian reading, which my friends will laugh at, because before lockdown I don't think I'd read a single Christian book. I just, like, the brain capacity for that, the enthusiasm for that was pretty much zero. But I have about 50 books in my house that I've been meaning to read. And I've loved it. I've really enjoyed it. It's been so nice at lunchtime being able to sit outside and read a book and kind of take that time out, which I wouldn't normally get if I was in school. Just because, you know, there are jobs to be done, there's things to do. So I guess I would say that, yeah, my strength in God is second to none at the moment. It's just been such an amazing opportunity to really take time out and to think about what I'm doing, and, like Emily said, whose strength I'm doing it in, to kind of get a bit of that energy back, a bit more kind of zest for wanting to learn and to develop. So yeah, really enjoyed it. It's been really good.
Well, thank you, Sophie, and thank you, Emily, for being with me today. It's been fantastic to get an insight into your lives, to hear about what you've been learning and contributing in the workplace during lockdown. And to those watching, if you found this video on the Above Bar Church website, there will be more stories in lockdown available during the next few weeks. Bye for now.